Never underestimate a middle-aged man with a pregnant wife and a HOA Karen holding a knife. That's the lesson I learned the night my life turned into a Lifetime movie meets John Wick. Let me set the scene. Suburban hellscape, 2 a.m., and a slashed ambulance tire. Oh, and Karen? She's about to regret every passive-aggressive note she ever taped to my door. My name's John Miller. I'm a 48-year-old accountant from Frisco, Texas, and until that night, my biggest problem was arguing with my HOA about the unauthorized shade of beige I'd painted our garage. My wife, Emily, saint that she is, was 8 months pregnant with our first kid. We'd survived gestational diabetes, 3 a.m. pickle and ice cream runs, and even Karen's latest vendetta against our overgrown hedges. But at 1:47 a.m. on October 12th, Emily elbowed me awake. John, contraction hospital now. Her voice was calm, but her death grip on my arm said everything. The baby was coming weeks early. I called 911, threw on pants, forgot socks, classic, and helped Emily waddle to the driveway. The ambulance arrived in 8 minutes flat. Paramedics rushed out, all business. "We'll take good care of her, sir," one said, loading Emily onto the gurney. That's when I heard the click-clack of heels on asphalt. Karen, our HOA president, a woman who'd once fined me $50 for a non-compliant Halloween skeleton, stalked toward us in a silk robe, her face lit by the ambulance's strobe lights. "This vehicle is illegally parked," she barked, waving a copy of the HOA bylaws like it was the damn Constitution. "Shared driveways require 48-hour advance notice for commercial vehicles." I gaped at her. "Karen, my wife's in labor. Rules don't take vacations for personal emergencies," she sneered. "Move. Now." The paramedic, a no-nonsense guy named Dave, stepped between us. "Ma'am, this is a medical emergency. We'll be gone in 5 minutes." Karen's eyes narrowed. 5 minutes? I'll be timing you." She pulled out her phone, snapped a photo of the ambulance's license plate, and stormed off. We were seconds from leaving when Dave cursed. "Tire's dead." Sure enough, the ambulance's front tire hung limp. A jagged gash ripped through the rubber. Emily's moans of pain echoed from inside. My blood ran cold. Dave radioed for backup, but the nearest hospital was 20 minutes away. No time to wait. I threw open my SUV's door. "We're taking my car." As we sped off, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Karen's silhouette lurking by her mailbox, clutching something metallic. The next 18 minutes were a blur. Emily's contractions came faster. I ran red lights. A cop started tailing me, until he saw Emily's silhouette and switched on his sirens to escort us. By the time we screeched into the ER, Emily was fully dilated. But as nurses whisked her away, I replayed Karen's smug face. Did she? No, even she wouldn't, right? Then my phone buzzed. A text from my neighbor, Carl. "Dude, check your Ring camera. Karen's on video at your driveway 10 minutes before the ambulance showed up." Holding a box cutter, I stood in that sterile hospital hallway, shaking with rage. Karen hadn't just crossed a line. She'd torched it. And as Emily's screams turned to our son's first cries, I made a vow. This wasn't over. Karen was going to pay. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and regret. Emily lay pale but alive in the bed. Our newborn son, Victor, swaddled in her arms. The doctor said the delay caused by Karen's little stunt had pushed Emily into precipitous labor. A term I didn't know until a nurse explained it meant your wife almost gave birth in a Chevy Tahoe. Victor was healthy, but Emily needed blood transfusions. I sat there, gripping her hand, replaying that slashed tire in my mind. Karen did this. Karen. The cops showed up around noon. Officer Ruiz, a tired-looking detective with a mustache thicker than Texas chili, took my statement. "You're sure it was Karen?" he asked, flipping through his notepad. "Check my Ring camera," I said, pulling up the footage Carl had sent me. There she was, Karen in her robe, creeping toward the ambulance with a box cutter glinting in the strobe lights. She knelt by the tire, did a quick glance around, and slice. The camera even caught her muttering, "Violation 12.7.3. Unauthorized vehicles. Ruiz whistled. That's felony vandalism of an emergency vehicle. Penal Code 28.03. What's the penalty? Up to 2 years in state jail. And that's before we tack on endangerment charges. I grinned for the first time in 24 hours. By the time I got home, the cul-de-sac looked like a scene from Shark Tank meets Cops. Karen was on her porch, arms crossed, holding court with her HOA lackeys. Neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years. Dave the retired Marine, Mrs. Nguyen who breeds Persian cats. Even the teens who skateboard past her no loitering signs were gathered in my driveway. John, you okay? Carl jogged over holding a USB drive. Got the full security footage. Karen's done. I plugged it into my laptop and projected it onto the garage door. The crowd gasped as Karen's late-night sabotage played on loop. That's my box cutter, shouted Mr. Jenkins, Karen's next-door neighbor. She stole it from my toolbox last week. Mrs. Nguyen nodded. She fined me $200 because my cat's tail protruded over the property line. Dave cracked his knuckles. Let's vote her out. Tonight. Karen stormed over, her face redder than the ambulance lights. This is illegal. You can't hold a meeting without 72 hours notice per HOA bylaws. Actually, I said, pulling up the bylaws on my phone, Article 4, Section 2 says emergency meetings can be called if there's imminent threat to community welfare. And lady, you're the threat. The crowd erupted in cheers. 2 days later, the HOA emergency meeting was standing room only. Karen had lawyered up. Some slick attorney named Chad who charged $500 an hour to say things like, my client was acting in good faith. Chad droned on about Karen's dedication to preserving property values. But the room wasn't buying it. When Karen took the mic, she pulled her signature move, the victim pivot. I've devoted years to this community, she sniffled. That ambulance was parked illegally. What if there'd been a fire? A gas leak? I had to act. Dave stood up. Bull, you've been terrorizing us for a decade. Remember when you tried to tow my wife's car because she parked too diagonally? Or when you called animal control on Mr. Kim's grill? Mrs. Nguyen added. You said his ribs were attracting vultures. The room exploded. Karen's mask slipped. You're all just jealous because I enforce rules you're too lazy to follow, she spat. That's when Officer Ruiz walked in with handcuffs. The cops didn't bother with subtlety. Ruiz read Karen her rights right there in the HOA meeting, her lawyer Chad suddenly remembering he had another appointment. As they let her out, she screamed about lawsuits and selective enforcement. But here's the kicker. Turns out Karen had been embezzling HOA funds for years. Fancy spa days, luxury car rentals, all billed as community maintenance. The DA hit her with fraud, vandalism, and 2 counts of reckless endangerment. At her bail hearing, the judge took one look at the ambulance footage and said, Ms. Wilkins, your HOA bylaws don't supersede state law. Enjoy county jail. With Karen gone, the neighborhood threw a block party. Dave grilled burgers. Mrs. Nguyen brought a cake shaped like a box cutter. And even the teens chalked RIP HOA on the street. But as I stood there, holding Victor under a starry Texas sky, I realized something. Karen wasn't the real villain. She was just a symptom. The HOA itself, the endless rules, the power trips, had let her thrive. So I did what any sleep-deprived new dad with a grudge would do. I ran for HOA president. Campaign slogan? No more bullshit. Karen's mugshot said it all. Smudged mascara, unbrushed hair, and a stare that could curdle milk. It went viral on Nextdoor within minutes. By dawn, the local news had dubbed her HOA horror and suburban scissorhands. But as satisfying as her perp walk was, the real battle was just beginning. Because Karen didn't go down without a fight. Her lawyer, Chad the Shark Thompson, filed a motion to dismiss the charges, arguing Karen was exercising her civic duty under HOA Covenant 12.7.3. No commercial vehicles shall park in shared driveways without prior approval. Chad even had the audacity to frame the ambulance as a commercial vehicle, citing its registration under the hospital's corporate fleet. "This is a gross overreach," Chad barked at the pretrial hearing, his Italian loafers clicking like a metronome. Ms. Wilkins was preventing an unauthorized vehicle from blocking emergency access routes. If anything, she's the real hero here. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with a reputation for hating HOA drama, peered over her glasses. "Counselor, are you seriously arguing that an ambulance responding to a medical emergency is a commercial vehicle?" Chad didn't blink. "The law doesn't discriminate based on intent, Your Honor. Rules are rules." I clenched my fists in the gallery. Emily, still recovering, had stayed home with Victor, but Carl and Dave flanked me like a middle-aged biker gang. "Don't worry," Dave muttered. "My cousin's a PI. We'll dig up every skeleton in Karen's closet." Turns out, Karen's closet was less skeletons and more a full-blown cemetery. The DA subpoenaed a decade of HOA financial records and found $43,000 missing, all siphoned into Karen's administrative expenses. Receipts included $1,200 for a neighborhood security seminar in Cancun, $800 per month for a community liaison vehicle, a Mercedes convertible, $15.99 for a violation notice delivery fee, Amazon Prime membership. But the piece de resistance? Karen had been charging neighbors $50 appeal fees to contest her own fines. A neat little racket that violated Texas Property Code Section 204.010. Embezzlement, fraud, and extortion. The DA told me, "We're adding 5 more charges." Chad, ever the opportunist, tried to flip the script. He filed a countersuit against me for defamation and emotional distress, claiming my Ring camera footage was edited. He even subpoenaed Victor's birth records to argue the ambulance delay didn't affect the baby's health. Emily lost it. "They're using our son as a legal shield?" She handed Victor to her mother and stormed into Chad's office. What happened next is legend in our neighborhood. Emily, 5 feet 4 inches, still in maternity leggings, laid into Chad so hard his receptionist quit. "You tell Karen," she hissed, "that if she so much as whispers my son's name in court, I'll sue her for every cent she stole. And I'll start by taking her house." Chad dropped the countersuit the next day. With Karen's credibility crumbling, the HOA board voted 7-1 to remove her as president. The lone holdout? Old Mr. Pritchard, who'd been bribed with free lawn treatments. But the real fireworks came at the special HOA meeting. Over 100 residents packed the community center, armed with pitchforks, metaphorical, and receipts, literal. One by one, they aired grievances that'd make Michael Corleone blush. "Mrs. Kim, Karen fined me $100 because my barbecue smoke drifted into her yard. She then demanded free ribs as restitution. Dave, she threatened to report me to the VA for unsanitary flag display because my American flag had 49 stars. Carl, she keyed my Tesla while inspecting my driveway for cracks. I presented a binder of Karen's financial crimes to the board. Motion to dissolve the HOA entirely, I said. The vote was unanimous. 2 days before trial, the DA offered Karen a plea deal. 18 months in state jail, restitution of the stolen $43,000, and permanent resignation from any HOA position. Karen refused. "I'd rather die than let those peasants win," she told Chad. Big mistake. The DA upgraded the charges to a second-degree felony, citing the embezzlement amount and aggravated endangerment of Emily and Victor. Under Texas law, that meant up to 20 years in prison. At the final pretrial hearing, Karen finally cracked. "I'll take the deal. I'll take it," she begged, mascara running down her face. The judge wasn't having it. "You had your chance, Ms. Wilkins. See you at trial." The neighborhood celebrated the HOA's dissolution with a bonfire in the park. We tossed Karen's bylaws, violation notices, and that godforsaken clipboard into the flames. As I nursed a beer, Carl handed me a file labeled Karen's Fraud Evidence. Inside was a handwritten note from her ex-husband. She did the same thing to our condo board in Florida. Got away with it because everyone was afraid to speak up. I grinned. Florida's statute of limitations hadn't expired. But that's a story for another day. The courtroom was packed. It felt like the Super Bowl of suburban justice. Every seat was filled with neighbors, reporters, and even a few people I didn't recognize who probably just wanted a front row seat to Karen's downfall. The air buzzed with anticipation. This wasn't just about me or Emily anymore. It was about every person who'd ever been fined for leaving their trash bins out an hour too long or told their mailbox wasn't the right shade of beige. Karen had become the poster child for HOA tyranny, and today was Judgment Day. Karen sat at the defendant's table, wearing a navy pantsuit that screamed, "I'm innocent," but a face that screamed, "I'm guilty as hell." Her lawyer, Chad Thompson, yes, that Chad, looked less cocky than usual, probably because he knew he was fighting a losing battle. On the other side of the room sat the DA, a sharp woman named Rachel Monroe, who had built her career taking down white-collar criminals. She looked at Karen like she was a particularly annoying mosquito she couldn't wait to swat. The judge entered, and everyone rose. Judge Harriet Calloway was known for her no-nonsense demeanor and her disdain for frivolous lawsuits. She adjusted her glasses, glanced at Karen, and said, "Let's get this circus started." Rachel Monroe wasted no time. She opened with a slideshow of evidence that could have doubled as a greatest hits album of Karen's crimes. First up, the Ring camera footage of Karen slashing the ambulance tire. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Monroe began, pacing in front of them like a lioness stalking prey. "This is not just vandalism. This is reckless endangerment. A deliberate act that could have cost 2 lives. Emily Miller and her newborn son." She clicked to the next slide, Karen's financial records. Monroe pointed to line items like community liaison vehicle, $800 per month, and neighborhood seminar, $1,200. "These are not expenses," Monroe said, her voice dripping with disdain. "These are luxuries paid for by hardworking homeowners under the guise of HOA fees." The jury leaned in as Monroe continued to unravel Karen's web of deceit. She called witnesses who painted a vivid picture of Karen's reign of terror. Dave testified about how Karen had tried to tow his wife's car for being too diagonally parked. Mrs. Nguyen described how Karen fined her for having garden gnomes that were not HOA approved. Carl shared how Karen had once threatened to report him to child services because his kids' sidewalk chalk drawings were defacing community property. Each story added another nail to Karen's coffin. When it was time for Karen to testify, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She walked to the stand with an air of defiance, clutching her pearls like they were going to save her from perjury. Chad had clearly coached her to play the victim. "I only ever wanted what was best for the neighborhood," she began, her voice quivering just enough to sound rehearsed. "I didn't slash that tire. I was simply inspecting it because I thought it might be leaking air." Monroe pounced like a cat on a mouse. "So you're saying you just happened to be holding a box cutter while inspecting an ambulance tire?" Karen stammered. It wasn't mine. I found it on the ground." Monroe raised an eyebrow and clicked to another slide. A close-up of Karen holding Mr. Jenkins' box cutter from the security footage. "Is this you?" Monroe asked. Karen hesitated for half a second too long before muttering, "Yes." "And is this you slashing the tire?" Karen turned red but didn't answer. Monroe turned to the jury. No further questions. Then it was my turn. As I walked to the stand, I glanced at Emily in the gallery holding Victor in her arms. That gave me all the strength I needed. "Mr. Miller," Monroe began, "can you describe what happened on October 12th? I took a deep breath and recounted everything. Emily going into labor, calling 911, the ambulance arriving, and then finding out someone had slashed the tire. "And what did that delay mean for your wife and child?" Monroe asked. "It meant my wife almost gave birth in our car," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "It meant my son could have died if we hadn't gotten to the hospital in time." Chad tried to rattle me during cross-examination by suggesting I had exaggerated Karen's behavior out of personal animosity. "Mr. Miller," he said smugly, "isn't it true you've had disputes with Ms. Wilkins in the past over HOA violations?" "Yes," I replied calmly. But none of those disputes involved endangering my family. Chad smirked as if he'd scored some kind of point and sat down. After closing arguments from both sides, Monroe delivering a fiery speech about accountability and Chad mumbling something about bylaws, the jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they returned, my heart pounded so loudly I thought everyone could hear it. On the charge of felony vandalism, the foreman began. We find the defendant guilty. A wave of relief washed over me. On the charge of reckless endangerment, guilty. Karen's face fell as if she'd just realized this wasn't going to end with a slap on the wrist. The judge sentenced her to 2 years in state prison and ordered her to pay $43,000 in restitution to the neighborhood association. A neighborhood association that no longer existed because we'd voted it out of existence 2 weeks earlier. As she was led out in handcuffs, Karen turned back toward me and hissed, "This isn't over." But it was over for all of us who'd lived under her thumb for far too long. Outside the courthouse, neighbors gathered around me like I just won an Oscar. Dave handed me a beer from his cooler. Yes, he brought one. Mrs. Nguyen hugged Emily and cooed over Victor, and Carl started planning our next block party. For once, our little community felt like an actual neighborhood, not just a collection of houses bound by arbitrary rules. As we drove home that evening with Victor sleeping peacefully in his car seat, Emily reached over and squeezed my hand. "You did good," she said softly. "No," I replied with a smile. "We did good." And for the first time in years, our street felt quiet. Not because everyone was afraid of breaking some rule, but because peace had finally returned to our corner of suburbia. Peace had finally returned to the neighborhood. Karen was gone, her reign of terror dismantled, and her clipboard retired to whatever dark corner of suburbia tyrants store their tools of oppression. The HOA was dissolved, the bylaws shredded, and for the first time in years, people were actually smiling at each other as they walked their dogs or watered their lawns. But as satisfying as it was to see Karen hauled off to prison, there was still one loose end I needed to tie up: revenge. Now, I know what you're thinking. John, isn't Karen already paying for her crimes? She's in prison. She owes the neighborhood thousands of dollars. Isn't that enough? And maybe for a better man it would have been. But after everything she put my family through, the slashed ambulance tire, the countersuit dragging my newborn son into court, I couldn't just let her fade into obscurity. No, I wanted Karen to feel what it was like to be powerless for once. It started innocently enough. With no HOA to enforce rules or deal with minor disputes, someone had to step up and keep an eye on things. Naturally, the neighbors nominated me as the new neighborhood watch captain. The title came with zero authority and even less responsibility, but it gave me just enough legitimacy to start my plan. I printed out flyers announcing our new neighborhood watch program and distributed them door to door. The flyer included a list of Karen's crimes, complete with bullet points, and a hotline number for reporting suspicious activity. The hotline? My cell phone. Within days, I was flooded with calls from neighbors eager to share their grievances about Karen's past behavior. Some were petty. She said my begonias were too vibrant. But others were downright shocking. She threatened to sue me for letting my kids sell lemonade without a permit. I compiled every story into a neatly organized binder labeled Karen's Greatest Hits and sent copies to local news outlets. Meanwhile, Karen had begun her court-mandated community service. The judge had sentenced her to 500 hours of cleaning graffiti off public buildings, a poetic punishment for someone who spent years fining people for sidewalk chalk drawings. One afternoon, I drove by the local library where Karen was scrubbing away at a particularly stubborn mural. She was wearing an orange vest that clashed horribly with her usual navy and beige ensemble, and her hair was tied back in a messy bun that screamed, "I've given up." I rolled down my window and waved. "Hey Karen, need any help?" I called out cheerfully. She glared at me but didn't respond. I parked across the street and watched as she struggled to remove the graffiti with a bottle of industrial-strength cleaner. It wasn't long before a group of teenagers gathered nearby, recording her on their phones and laughing at her expense. I didn't feel guilty, not even a little bit. A few weeks later, Karen's house went up for auction. She'd been forced to sell it to pay restitution to the neighborhood association, even though we'd dissolved it. The auction drew quite a crowd. Neighbors, reporters, even some random people who'd heard about Karen's downfall through social media. I showed up early with Emily and Victor in tow. We weren't planning to bid. We just wanted to watch the spectacle unfold. As the auctioneer rattled off details about the property, 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, recently renovated kitchen, I couldn't help but chuckle at how ordinary it sounded compared to its infamous former owner. The bidding started at $250,000 and quickly climbed higher as people competed for the chance to own Karen's house. By the time it hit $300,000, a man in a cowboy hat raised his paddle and shouted, "I'll take it!" The crowd erupted in applause. Karen's reign was officially over. Fast forward a year. Victor turned 1, Emily was healthier than ever, and life in our neighborhood had never been better. To celebrate Victor's birthday and our newfound peace, we threw a massive block party in our cul-de-sac. Dave brought his famous smoked brisket. Mrs. Nguyen baked cupcakes shaped like garden gnomes. Carl set up a bounce house for the kids. Even Officer Ruiz stopped by with his patrol car so the kids could take pictures behind the wheel. As I stood there watching Victor smash cake into his face while Emily laughed beside him, I realized something. Revenge wasn't just about punishing Karen. It was about reclaiming what she'd stolen from us, our sense of community. Months later, I got an unexpected call from Chad Thompson, Karen's former lawyer. He sounded nervous but determined. "Mr. Miller," he began hesitantly. "Karen asked me to reach out on her behalf." I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "She wants you to know she regrets what happened." I couldn't help but laugh. Regrets slashing an ambulance tire or regrets getting caught? Chad paused before answering. "Both." I hung up without responding. As the dust settled and life slowly returned to normal, Emily and I found ourselves grappling with the lingering effects of that harrowing night. Emily, once carefree and trusting, now startled at unexpected noises and insisted on triple-checking the locks before bed. Our son Victor, though too young to remember the incident, seemed to sense the residual tension. His cries would intensify whenever sirens wailed in the distance. We sought help from a family therapist, who guided us through the process of healing. Emily learned breathing techniques to manage her anxiety, while I worked on expressing my anger in healthier ways. Slowly but surely, we reclaimed our sense of safety and peace. One quiet evening, as we sat on our porch watching Victor toddle across the lawn, Emily turned to me with tears in her eyes. "You know," she said softly, "I used to think strength meant never showing weakness, but now I realize it's about facing our fears together." I squeezed her hand, feeling a profound gratitude for the resilience of my family and our community. The scars from Karen's actions would always be there, but they no longer defined us. Instead, they served as a reminder of our capacity to overcome adversity and the importance of standing up for what's right. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over our neighborhood, I realized that true justice isn't about revenge or punishment. It's about healing, growth, and the quiet triumph of ordinary people coming together to build something better. And in that moment, watching my wife and son bathed in the fading light, I knew we had achieved just that.